Education meeting for June 6th. We have a lot of different things on the agenda tonight. The first thing we have to do, though, is a bit of a shuffle among our board members. So we're going to start. Gab has something to say.
Yeah, I think everybody probably read what I sent out earlier this week, and thank you, Janine, for getting that out to everybody. I've decided to step down for the last 3 weeks of my term in order for Christina to step onto the board, and it was partially due to the way all the different terms are going to start, staggered start times, that I just wanted everybody to be able to start at the same time. So tonight we're going to have several different appointments. I'm going to suggest to the board that they appoint Christina in my stead for the next 3 weeks. And I just want to say that I've really enjoyed being on the board for the last 12 years. It's been amazing working with the administration, the teachers, the staff, everybody in the district. And it's been great serving the community. So thank you.
I've served on the board almost as long as Gab. She was on 1 year ahead of me. And we've been on a lot of the same committees together. It's been a really wonderful thing having you on the board. You spent some time as the president, though.
A year,
but yeah.
That was all I could do.
It seemed like longer.
Yeah.
Way longer.
But, you know, I think we're really going to miss her. She has a wonderful sense of organization, of thoughts about finance, keeping us organized, you know, pushing on different points that people are interested in. So I will definitely miss her, and we wish her all the best.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yep.
Gab, leave your name.
Yes, and Christina, you can
Come down. There you go.
There we go.
Okay.
Well, not yet.
Okay. The other person, Jody, also officially stepped down from her seat, which would normally end at the end of June, and that's because she, as the third highest vote winner in the election, picks up the remainder of Lindsay Hicks' term, which runs until 2018. So Jody has actually stepped down from her current position, and we will be appointing her to Lindsay's position. So that one, that spot that goes until 2018
Just in time.
Just in time. And then this young man is going to be appointed also. He is picking up the balance of Jody's term because that leaves a vacancy when she steps down. So, like I said, the shuffle. And you can thank New York State for all the arcane rules that make it happen this way. So, Janine, do you want to swear everybody in? Okay.
All do it at the same time.
Okay, so if you guys would each stand up.
I'll have you sign the book.
Eileen, just to clarify, so then do we have to swear Tim and Christina in again on July 1st?
Yes, for the new terms will start July 1st. So, yeah, you only get 3 weeks, and if you decide not to keep going, Christina, it's this isn't a trial run.
We can raise our right hand.
I,
State name.
Christina Mitchell,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
and I will faithfully discharge the duties of the office
of Board Trustee,
of Board Trustee,
Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District,
Hastings-on-Hudson Union Free School District,
Town of Greenburgh, Westchester, New York,
Town of Greenburgh, Westchester, New York,
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Okay. So, I really need my hard copy.
You want hard
Did you
copy
get more
right
hard copies?
Extra hard copy of the agenda.
Okay.
Got it.
I got one here, thank you.
Never mind.
Okay, so, all right, so the first thing really that we're going to get to after these appointments is usually is the announcements from the superintendent. So we want to announce the...
Sure. I really don't have many announcements tonight because I know we have a a report that'll be a bit more lengthy than our normal meeting, so I'm going to not do my report. However, we do want to move one of our personnel appointments to the front of the meeting. And we have a recommendation for a new assistant principal at the Hillside Elementary School. And I'm going to introduce Amy Case as the principal to do the introduction.
Good evening, everyone. It is truly my pleasure to be here tonight with all of you and to recommend a wonderful candidate for our assistant principal of Hillside Elementary School. I'd like to introduce to you John DeCams. I'd like to tell you a little bit about John and the process that he went through in order to become our new assistant principal. Mr. DeCams comes to Hastings with experience as an assistant principal in the Wappinger Central School District. In this K-6 building, Mr. DeCams has had many responsibilities, including chairperson of the school's response to intervention team, PLC facilitator, student referral system manager, 504 meeting facilitator, testing coordinator, incident commander on the school safety team, and school webmaster. I could stop right there and just tell you, wow. Additionally, Mr. DeCams has had more than 6 years of classroom experience teaching both general and special education. Mr. DeCams holds a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education from SUNY New Paltz, a Master of Science in Special Education from Long Island University, and a certificate in School Building Leadership from the College of St. Rose. Mr. DeCams participated in a rigorous interview process with over 150 applicants. It was highly competitive. There were multiple rounds. We began with a screening interview. We moved on to a panel interview with many stakeholders from our community. We then had administrative rounds where Mr. DeCams joined us in walking into classrooms and talking about instructional practice, and finally a recommendation to Dr. Montesano. It is truly my pleasure to introduce to you Mr. John DeCams tonight.
So can I have a motion to appoint?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor? Welcome aboard.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Okay. At this point, I'm going to introduce Dr. Lauren Katzman from the Urban Collaborative, who's been the auditor for our special education programs. She's completed a review, and she's here tonight to share the results of her findings with us. And so, without further ado, Lauren, you are on. So let me help you get set up here and dial into your colleague, and we'll get going.
Just walk around.
All right, let me get my stand.
Lauren, do you want us to sit right here?
Well, she has to stand over here.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to scoot over there.
I'll swing around.
I just pulled it up. That's what I just did. You see it in your HOH account, and you have to give them.
You're in this room. It's a little bit the norm.
Do you want me to email
I can pull
it to you?
it on there. So
It says
presumably she's going to put it on the overhead, and it's not going to be in a different place.
it's 67 pages, so I don't know how much. Okay, that's the gray line order for tonight. So this was on 6/31 it was sent. And you have to download it before you send it. Did you get it? Do you want me to send this to you? Does that help?
6:31 send. Oh, I see.
I can send this to your Gmail.
I can send this to my. I can send this.
Did you download it?
And that's no problem sending to my personal.
Okay, so if you don't have it, just let me know.
She's going to talk. No, it's not yet.
Where'd you guys go? Oh, I see. There's like
You're not on the...
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great, but it's better.
Yeah, my friend is setting up kind of house with Sarah.
Good? There's one in my office.
There's also one.
What? This is what I have.
You want to share?
It came in at 6:30.
All I ask is that you give it back to me at the end.
I ask that you remind me.
If you can't, I can
You know what, do
push
you
this
mind
back
if you
and
have
put...
better? Do you mind?
Yeah,
All right,
Can you just email it?
ready?
yeah, I'll email it to you.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
This is a school. Hello, everybody. I was a middle school teacher. My name is Lauren Katzman, and I'm the Executive Director of the Urban Special Education Leadership Collaborative. And I was leading this, you guys call it an audit, I call it a review. Sounds a little less ominous. But I was the one that led this review for the district. Just a little bit about me so you know who's standing up here. And I also want to introduce you to somebody who's on the phone in a second, my colleague, who is a current special ed director or supervisor in Springfield, Massachusetts, and she's working today, so she couldn't come here. But my background, my 34th year in the field of special ed. I'm so old. I started out as a special ed teacher. I then became a professor of special education at Boston University, and I was a teacher for 14 years. I was a special ed professor at Boston University. Then I was the special ed director, executive director for New York City Public Schools. Then I was the special ed director for Newark Public Schools and in New Jersey. And now I run this organization called the Urban Special Education Leadership Collaborative. And we are an organization of about 110 school districts across the country. And we're two arms. One is we're kind of like a national professional learning community, and then the other arm is we do these district reviews. And in every district review we do, we make sure that there's me or somebody like me on the team, and also somebody like Jennifer, who's on the phone, who is in the field currently. I'm out of the field 2 years now. Jennifer's in the field. We want to make sure we stay as current as possible. So Jennifer, you want to say hi so people can hear your voice?
Yes, hello everybody. I'm not sure how well everyone can hear me in that room, but
You can hear her okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's Jennifer Barabo. So I'm going to go through our review with you. There's a lot of information. I don't think we have, we could spend all day, let's be honest. If you want to talk about special ed in a district, you could spend all day. So I'll go through it as quickly as you guys want me to go through it, but if you have questions, comments, please, let's talk. Because I think one of the concerns that brought me here was a lawsuit that you guys were involved in, and that had to, there were tensions around that lawsuit. And I want to tell you that, I think you guys are, there's room for growth. There's absolutely room for growth. There's room for a lot of growth. There isn't every single district you're ever going to find. There's no district that's perfect, but you guys are all on the same page. Look at this audience here. This is fantastic. And every single person we talked to, whether it was staff, families, and we spoke to you here, people called me, maybe some of you are in the room who I spoke to on the phone, you sent me emails, everybody wanted the same thing. And I promise you that's not typical. It's not the norm. I've been to districts where the adults are talking horribly about families and kids. It's not the case here. Everybody seems to be really frustrated, but focused on what's right for kids. And I just want to let you know that is not the norm, and that's something to feel proud of. So I just wanted to start there. This presentation that I have here, it can be used for other things, so we have a lot of information in there, so we just have a full document that people can use. So we just started off just with the, with the information around Hastings, philosophy, etc. And this is, actually, let me back up a second and say this is a presentation, but it's based on a report, which I should show you what it looks like. It's a report that is going to look like this, and it's, how long did we make it? 67 pages of a report. So this is what this presentation is based on. So all of our findings are in here, and our recommendations.
Will be made public?
Yes,
When?
after tonight.
Where?
It will be available on our district website
For how long?
as long as it needs to be.
How long?
Forever, until somebody takes it down.
Thanks.
For some reason, yeah. I don't know who's talking, so I can't see it, but,
Thank you.
okay, yeah.
I did a review in 2004 in New York City before I was the special ed director there, and it's still up on the website.
So it's useful.
I'm taking it, thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to start by framing what special ed, or our framework around what special ed is. So you can be clear with our viewpoint and what we're looking for and what we're looking at. So special ed is a service and not a place, and in Hastings, that's true. In many, many places, like when I last worked in Newark, half of the kids with disabilities were in segregated classes or in schools. That's not the case here. So you guys get that special ed is a service. The other rationale for the service is that you want to not try to fix disability. Disability, if it's truly there, doesn't go away. I have ADHD. It's not going anywhere. I got to figure out how to embrace it and how to use it to my benefit. So special ed should be there to minimize any negative impacts and maximize my abilities, because any disability has a pro. You know, there may be some dis in the disability, but boy, I wouldn't have it any other way than to have my ADHD. My brain is fascinating. I never stop thinking. I amuse myself. Our report is organized in 4 different ways, based on this idea that special ed is a service, not a place. Special ed is meant to minimize disability, or the negative effects of disability, and maximize opportunities for kids with disabilities. And our report is organized for Hastings in these 4 different areas. So we looked at the district organization to make sure that it was organized in a way to focus positively on special ed. We looked at the demographics and special ed eligibility. We looked at your instruction to see what it looked like and how kids were doing. We looked at community engagement. And the 4th one, I want to tell you, I think is the one area that may need the most attention. The way we collected our data is we collected so much data. We talked to over 50 people. And then we came back with our findings, and what we like to do is once we have our initial findings, we then go back to the district and talk them through to make sure that we're all on the same page. So it's an iterative process that we go back and forth together. And just as an FYI, we'll be back here in 2 years to look to see how the recommendations that the board adopts are or are not being implemented. So we're here for a while now. And I want to start with our findings in these 4 areas, but before I get there, I just want to focus on some major areas of strength in the district. And these are, I just want to raise them because these are areas that many districts have issues with and you don't. And I'm not sure everybody will see it in the same way, but let's just start there. I want to say that the current director of special ed has created an overall positive climate and culture and is an asset to the special ed department. We heard that from everybody. There is, and Laura back there, I mean, she was, that was, you know, it was quite unusual to not have anybody say anything negative about a person. And a lot of people raised, we did not ask specifically about Laura, but people raised it all the time. So that's a very big area of strength. You guys, since the lawsuit, have identified gaps in your areas of providing services, and you're addressing them. We'll talk more about what that looks like, but you have been addressing them. You've been providing more services. You've been bringing kids back who are out of district, so you have been addressing them. Your rate, and I'll go over this in more detail later, the percent of kids with disabilities you have in the district compared to the state and the nation is good. You're very comparable to the nation. New York is very high. That's not considered positive. The nation is the goal you want to look at, and you're comparable to the nation. And we'll go through that in more detail. But a lot of places are not. And again, as the former director of New York City, I know that New York State is under some pressure to attend to this, and you don't need to do that as a district. And then the last one is that the kids in Hastings academically are outperforming. Kids with and without disabilities are outperforming their peers in New York State. Now there's gaps to attend to between kids with and without disabilities here. And there's room to grow for teaching and learning for kids with disabilities. But as a whole, you outperform the state. So those are just positives, areas of strength. And now I'll start going into these 4 different areas. Questions, comments, you're all good? Okay. All right, so first we looked at the district organization, and we want to make sure when we're looking at the district organization that central office is organized in a way that special ed is part of everything. It's not a separate silo. You want to make sure it's part of. And we found, if you look at this organization, you have on paper the superintendent, director of special education, director of curriculum and instruction. Need some water. So you have the setup, you have the structural setup, and you have a lot of informal meetings, and there's a lot of conversation between these three. But that's the positive. On the not positive side, we saw that there's not necessarily a structured process for how things are worked on together. So for example, if you see a curriculum going out to the district, what you'd want to see is that the curriculum attends to kids with and without disabilities. So you have these tiers of supports. And we did not see that. We saw that the structure's in place, but we didn't see that a robust process is in place for that work to happen. And so one of our recommendations is going to be to put some processes in place for this group to work more purposefully together, to make sure that anything that flows out with all kids in mind and it's not siloed. Make sense? All right. The next thing we looked at was the Office of Special Ed. And again, on paper, it looks like things are organized. But there's two things we found when it comes to the Office of Special Ed and all the people that work through the Office of Special Ed or with the Office of Special Ed. The one thing we'll start with is the Director of Special Ed's job. She, whether it's Laura or whether it's anybody else, does, in our opinion, focus on the day-to-day stuff too much and not on the district. And I know you needed that to heal in a way and to get back on track, but right now your Director of Special Ed doesn't have the availability of time or her position once IEP season starts to do anything else but IEPs. So there's no way for her to spend a lot of time doing this work or to provide professional development to the district or to even create a vision of special ed for the district. So we think that there should be some rethinking of the special ed director's role in day-to-day IEP work. That does not mean that the director of special ed should not be involved in IEPs, but not every single one. Not every single one is in need of, you have so many folks working. So she should be involved in the ones that she's needed. There needs to be an escalation process, not in every single one. And I know in Westchester, I've seen it a lot here, where the special ed director focuses on every single IEP meeting, but that's not the norm in many, many places. So for example, when I was the director in Newark, there was an escalation process that would get to me. But then when it got to me, I could make some different decisions. Then I could really spend time focusing on major issues as opposed to focusing on every single child that my staff was well equipped and qualified to do. And my staff knew more about the child than I did because I was the director. I wasn't with that child all the time.
Can I ask you a quick question on that? So you compare Hastings and Newark, that's a tough comparison. But
True.
But I guess my question is, you say Westchester, but how about comparative size districts?
It's all, I mean, there's no one way to do this. There's so many different ways to do this, and so many different state rules. For example, in Massachusetts, special ed teachers are not allowed to run IEP meetings. So, I mean, every state has their own rules, so it really depends. But what we don't see the special ed director here being able to focus big picture, and we do see that she's focusing on IEP meetings. And in looking across the country, the special ed director needs to focus systemically more. Again, not that she doesn't attend when needed, but not all the time.
Who should be the primary?
That is a question I don't want to answer for you, because there's a number of different ways to do it. And I can just speak to what I know has been done, but there could be a number of ways. And just so you know, I'm here with them for the next 2 years, so I'm happy to talk through ideas and maybe list some pros and cons, or reach out to other folks around the country and ask them what they think about some ideas that may happen here. I just think there needs to be something well thought out. And to add to that, the other piece here is there's a lot of folks in this org chart that are doing jobs, but the jobs may have one title across 3 schools, but the roles and responsibilities are completely different across all 3 schools. And so our other recommendation is to look carefully at the roles and responsibilities of everybody attending to special ed, to special ed services, to be clear about who's doing what. Because you have the special ed team leader in one school doing one thing and another school doing another thing. There's not a consistent responsibility structure for the team members. And I think if that got more organized, there'd be more room for the special ed director. So I think in answer to your question around what the focus should be, I think there's a lot of things to figure out. You just need to figure it out so it's best for Hastings. All right. So I'm going to just go through some more. Let's see, I did those 2. This third one, this 5C, so the first 2 I just described. Given the changes that Hastings has seen in the last several years, we think there's a need for a district-wide vision to be developed. Nobody could speak to us about what is the vision of special ed in Hastings. And I think that's another thing the special ed director can help focus the district on, and then you have a goal to reach. We also suggest that there are clearly defined roles and responsibilities. And the last one, maybe the last one, second to last one, because there's such ill-defined roles and responsibilities in people's jobs, there's also ill-defined processes. When I asked for a standard operating procedure manual, I could not get one here. So I think there's a strong need for a manual that has all of the processes down and agreed upon, and that everybody follows, and that's made a document that is a document that's online that everybody can see and pull from. Families can see. It just needs to be very, very visible to anybody. But who gets classified? I mean, what are the classification processes? What are the services that are provided? Who does what? So a robust standard operating procedure manual to make sure that all your roles and responsibilities and processes are organized. And the last one is, in terms of central office, is about data. When we collected our data from the district, there was confusion around it, and I want to, before I describe the confusion we saw, I want you to know that the district was well aware of this before we saw the confusion and has been working on this. But there was an issue with the special ed system and the district system talking to one another, so the data was not always aligned. And there was an issue with who owned what data, but when I brought the issue to the district, they explained to me all the things they had already been doing around that. So there is an issue, and I'm not going to be able to show you some data that I would have liked to show you because I couldn't tell, I can't use the data. Like, I'm not going to be able to show you data on race because the data on, the demographic data on race in the district was too confused for us to be clear. Because there's a small number of kids too, so I couldn't give percentages. So and that needs to be attended to, and I believe it is being attended to now.
Is data required by state?
The data that's required by state was fine. So yes, data is required by state. That's not the data. What we were trying to do was come up with demographic data. The data that's required by state would be percent of kids with disabilities, percent of kids in each category, where they are placed, what percentage of the time they're in general ed classes. There's 20 indicators. I don't know how many Hastings has to provide to the state, but that data is okay. The special ed data was okay. The district data was okay. It was when we tried to match them up to get different answers that it wasn't okay. So our recommendation is to create structures in central office, develop a clear, wide vision for special ed, structure the cabinet members so there's stronger processes, and structure the special ed office to promote more effective and efficient supports to schools. So everything I just said. That's area 1. Questions, comments? All right. Oh, wait, there's another whole thing. Sorry, I forgot.
When you talk about the standard operating procedure manual,
Yes.
are there manuals like that being used in districts our size?
I've given you some samples, but not of districts your size, so I can look again for more districts your size. I've given you some in the report I gave some sample ones. But I gave the ones that I've used myself and my team has used. But yes, there shouldn't be much difference. I mean, the process is the process. But let me look and see if there's any, we can look locally Because the districts locally work well together. So there's some questions. I mean, there's some information that can be shared. So this was just about the systems, the effective management of special ed supports and services. I went through all this. Okay, so I'm going to go through the demographics and special ed eligibility. This is where I'm going to show you a lot of data. All right? So the first data is what I was talking about earlier, where I said that your numbers around kids with disabilities are comparable to the national numbers. And I want to just actually back up and remind or explain to you that the data that I'm showing you is last year's data, because this year's data is not done. So everything we're showing you here is based on last year's data.
So it's not 2014?
Okay, so actually I should have, here's the thing. This one is based on 2014 because the national data is 2 years behind that. So the earliest national data you can get is 2014. The data we collected for the district was last year's data. This particular data set is, you can get this easily anywhere. I mean, I can get this on the state website. I don't need it from you.
Okay.
But the data we collected from, the data thing is confusing. So let me just say that we collected data from you from last year. When you're looking to compare it with the federal data, the earliest federal data we can get is 2014.
The latest.
Sorry, the latest federal data we can get is 2014. And in some places we had a mix years, and we noted where we had a mix years.
So in other words, the
So
federal data here is...
This is all 2014.
So this New York State and the Hastings data on this slide is also...
This is all 2000. We want to compare it comparable.
Thank you.
So now 1 second. So the national is 12.9, and people, that's a number. Percent of kids classified with an IEP. This is not 504. So it's not all kids with disabilities, it's kids who get IEPs. And this is the number, and there's a lot of talk about this being too high. And so Hastings is good, and there's a lot of talk about New York being way too high. Because you can have a disability and not have an IEP. Sorry, you're going to ask something?
Yes. So you were saying that we were sort of within the range of the national percentage.
Mm-hmm.
What would be considered significant in terms of a differential?
I can't answer that because significant is a particular term, and I don't want to. That has to be a calculation.
Is there a standard deviation or anything like that?
The difference between the 12.9 and what else? Not that I am aware.
What dictates within the national average or not within the national average?
Well, that's a real. I mean, here. Okay, let me just back up.
Arbitrary?
Let's move away from Hastings for a second and just let me tell you about a national conversation going on right now. There's no way to say that this is right or wrong, honestly. I mean, like it's all. So there's 13 disability categories, and 85% of the kids get classified. It's with subjective categories. So there's no science to say, like, I have ADHD. Yes, it's subjectively decided that I have ADHD. I'm on some sort of a continuum. I'm pretty clear I do, but it's still, there's some subjectivity around it, and there's some social construction around it. So there's a lot of debate right now around this number and who can say is it exact. It's not. But this is the norm we're basing things on now. It could change. And so there's nobody's making any formulaic comparisons with this because this is a norm, not a fact. And this is the fact of the country, but it's not a fact that it's accurate. It's not a fact that it's right.
So what would make it a fact?
You can answer that. There's no answer to that.
So why is it good that it's low?
Because okay, I'll tell you why. Because there are many. Okay, let's look at what special ed should be. Let's even go back. Special ed is a support to a child to help them succeed in school when the disability is getting in the way, right? I'm going to keep using myself as an example. I have ADHD. And I'm using myself as an example on purpose, guys, because you have a huge number of kids classified with ADHD or in OHI here, which most of that is ADHD, which I'll get into later. But you have me with ADHD. I definitely had issues in school, and the way to attend to my issues would be sit me in the front so I'll pay closer attention. I mean, or give me some, if you give me an assignment that's going to take a month, help me break it down, because you give me an assignment that's going to take a month, the day before is when I'm going to start. Maybe the morning of. You know, but if you give me these due dates in advance, those things are important for me to have. Let me get up sometimes. Let me, understand that sometimes I just need to zone out in some music. Those things don't require a specialty. They don't require money. That's still, I have a disability, and that's still attending to it, but it's not special ed services that I need. So there's a lot of kids who are getting special ed services who have disabilities but don't necessarily need special ed services. That's one thing. That's been very well researched. The other thing that's been very well researched, and is not an issue in Hastings that we think is not an issue in Hastings, but your numbers are low and we don't have good data to show that, is kids of color, especially black boys, are overrepresented. And that is a fact. They're overrepresented due to the assessments that are being used, due to subjectivity. So a lot of the high number is because you have boys of color overrepresented in the categories of emotional disturbance, overrepresented in the category of mental or intellectual disability, and speech and language now. So those are the two reasons why people think the numbers are too high. And then those are the two facts. And then anecdotally, so many kids who are classified as having a disability have a disability, are classified because of two things. One, they don't read, and two, they don't behave well. And I'm an old university professor. I know what we're teaching our teachers in terms of teaching kids to read, and it's not okay. There is no reason that kids, the majority, vast majority of kids can't be reading at very high levels. We know how to teach kids to read, and yet so many kids are not reading. And so a lot of kids get classified because they're not reading. So you're functionally disabled. Because if you look at when the kids are getting classified, it's in the 3rd grade. That's when you're learning, instead of learning to read, you're reading to learn. And then the other thing is behavior, because there's such behavioral issues and then teachers don't know how to attend to it. Yeah.
New York State, the Governor's Task Force on the Common Core Standards found that the K through 2 standards are developmentally inappropriate, I think, for 20 to 25% of children. Do you think the fact that we are still by law required to be Common Core is impacting these numbers?
The numbers were there before Common Core was there. I think you can attend to Common Core if you provide access to them just as well as you can attend to what was before or what's going to come after. So I don't think the numbers have raised since Common Core.
Can I just be center? Our numbers aren't high, right?
Correct.
So we're not possibly overinflating, or
I do. Well,
no one's overinflating, but we're sort of in. If there are norms,
I'm saying you're within the norm.
Okay.
That's my big point.
I just wanted to.
Yes. Sorry. Back. Thank you for bringing this back, and then I'm going to take one more, and then I'm going to keep moving.
Do you have historical numbers before the 11.9?
I do, and they're all 11.9 except 1 year is 13%, which, again, because your numbers are so small, it could be a handful of kids. But for the last 5 years, you were either 11.9 every year or 1 year you were 13.
And you looked at race, did you look at income level?
No. No, I don't have that information. I didn't get that information.
Do we have that information in the district?
The income level?
Yeah.
Do you have it? I guess we could look at free and reduced lunch, right?
Yeah,
that would be the only. That would be the. That's
the only number we have that we can use.
Well, that's the only number we would use.
Right. Well, there's now talk about the Alice numbers instead of.
Okay. Let's think about that. Let me think about. Hold that idea. Actually, let me think about that idea. But let me just show you, because your 11.9 is good, but now I'm going to show you something else. So. That's the good part. Now, if you look at this, this is taking the major disability categories and splitting them up. And again, so I'll start with the nation, all right? And this is the percent of kids within the group of kids with disabilities, all right? Now it's breaking that apart. And if you break that apart for the country, you see this blue is kids with autism. This is kids with emotional disturbance. This is kids with specific learning disability. That you see, that's up to close to 40%, and it's higher now. This is kids with other health impairment, and other health impairment, the major, or not the major, but the most popular and the most known group are kids with ADHD in here. These are children with speech and language impairment, and this is just all the others: intellectual disability, multiple disabilities, traumatic brain injury, visual impairment, deaf blindness, deafness, orthopedic impairments, and hearing impairments are all in here. So if you look at the nation and you look at Hastings, anybody see what the difference is? ADHD.
Population, right?
Huh?
It's a small population.
It's a small population. Yep.
Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? You say, I hear you repeatedly saying ADHD. I'm not disputing that. Very often when a child is diagnosed with ADHD, often there are other diagnoses that go along with
Absolutely
it.
right.
So there could be a child, just for instance, who does in fact have a specific learning disability, also has ADHD, but has been categorized to be in other health impairment. Has that been something that you've taken a look at?
No, because these are what the numbers that you have are usually, or the numbers that we can compare it to are the first one that's listed is usually the quote unquote main one. So they're based on the first one listed, or the.
So
it's definitely, well, there's comorbidity with ADHD and LD, very much so.
Yeah.
But it, yes.
So is it possible that whoever is writing or creating the initial IEP in the initial meeting is going towards that other health impairment as the category for whatever reason, rather than classifying it under another area, which could also very well be part of the disability?
Yes, it's possible. Again, like I'm saying, nothing here, when you're looking at these disability categories, there's a lot of fluidity. So absolutely, it's possible. But again, yeah, it's possible.
What did you take
Lauren.
from this?
Yes, Jen. Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in for a second around the complexities when you're looking at IEPs. Unfortunately, because it's a great point that was raised by whoever was just speaking, when you label a child with a primary disability, that's the only one that we see. That's the only one that the state actually acknowledges when they're doing their data collection. So in order for us to really tease that out, you'd have to really look individually at each IEP and really look at the assessments that were done for students to get a really clear picture on, are students being over-identified with OHI, and is there something else underlying that we're missing when we're coming to these meetings and we're looking at these assessments that we need to look closer at to see if maybe it's not OHI, but something else that actually is impacting the child's academic performance.
Yes.
So there's complexities because you'd have to get consent from parents to look at each and every IEP, and not all parents want you to have that access.
Right. Okay, thank you. Good point. Yes, sir?
Is there a cost element associated? Is one category less, it costs less to address than another?
There's, it depends on how the district and how the state.
Disabilities have greater requirements to deal with than the other.
I know that. Okay, so I'm thinking New York City, but I'm wondering if this is New York State. Do you get money based on LRE, right? Based on Laura, do you get money based on class placement?
Which is small.
Doesn't really
matter.
Yeah.
So no, and in most districts you get money based on the type of service, not the label. Yes, sir.
So, if I'm understanding this correctly, the 11.9% is pretty much average for the country.
Correct.
Until Texas goes up, but that's something else. So
Don't get me started on Texas.
I know. So, 11.9%. Oh, if OHI is being disproportionately used as a classification, what are the concerns there? And the reason I ask that is because I would only see real concern if a child is not being evaluated completely, so that you're only using OHI. But once a child's diagnosed, or I should say classified, you're supposed to be looking at all the potential disabilities and all the issues. So what's the practical issue? Aside from maybe autism where you automatically get certain services, what's the practical issue with having too many OHIs?
Well, the practical issue is you don't want to have special ed services if you don't need them.
Oh, but I'm just saying, but we're already sort of establishing that we're in an average rate. Are you saying that?
I'm saying that maybe. I'm not saying that. I'm painting the picture. I'm not I'm not going to say that. But I'm saying you guys...
You just said you don't need them.
I don't know. I mean, I'm painting the picture. There's no answer to your question. There's things to consider. Just consider all of this. You want to give your majority and your most intense services to the kids who are most in need. So I think you're just kind of along the national issues. You're kind of similar, except when you're in a suburban school district, you're going to see that OHI is higher. OHI is higher for white kids. And you're going to see that. If you go to an urban district, you're going to see something different. So there's, again, of course, if you have special ed services, and in many places that's a good thing, and in many places it's a bad thing. So here it's a good thing, that's great, but still you don't want to spend a lot of your energy classifying a child, giving them special ed services if it's not needed. But I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
You are saying it.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in general, but I'm not saying that to answer your question. I'm saying that in general. And I don't have an answer to your question, honestly. Yes?
Just to sort of make it clarify, it sounds like if there's children that are being classified in this other health impairment and our overall rate is comparable, then that could imply that the rates of the other diagnoses are undercounted.
Could be. Well, I would say that this is undercounted.
SLD.
I would say, where are you?
SLD.
This is undercounted here.
That's the question.
SLD.
That's the question.
There are a lot of, but I think as categories go, as a small district,
But let me.
it does invite a discussion, but go ahead a little bit.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and I want to show you. I'm going to move ahead, but I'm going to come back to OHI. So let me move ahead because we'll come back to OHI with another piece of information. I'm going to come back. All right. So I just want to also show you gender. Again. The fact that you have more boys than girls classified is very typical for a district. Pros and cons, not necessarily right, but very typical. Again, if you look by disability category, you have more boys than girls in the majority of classifications except SLD, specific learning disability. Again, not uncommon. If you look across schools, I want to say that, again, this is 1 year's data. It's a very small number of kids, but I wanted to point out a very positive thing, that your speech and language here, here, you see how it's large here, goes down, that is exactly right. Because you want, the younger kids should get more speech and language than the older kids. We don't always see that in districts. That's exactly right. You see your numbers with kids with autism are pretty standard across, and that's good. The rest of them are fairly standard. So that's a good thing. Yes. You sure? Okay. So that's your just general demographics, but now I'm going to get into another type of demographic where students are educated. So I wanted to just show you a piece of information before I show you where kids are educated in Hastings. This is from a national study done twice now, and it's 11,000 students across the country of all disability types, all severities of disability, all genders, and all SES, that says the more time a child with a disability spends in a general ed class, the higher their scores on standardized tests, the fewer absences from school, the fewer referrals for behavior, the better outcomes they have after school. I want to let you know that that's the major study that a lot of our research is based on and our work is based on. And I also want to let you know that as required in federal law, every district needs to provide a continuum of services, a continuum of special ed services. So what you might call full inclusion, and that's most of your time in the general ed class, should be the majority of your kids with disabilities, and then partial inclusion, sometimes pulled out. Substantially separate classes, and out of district should be the fewest amount of your kids. So you see that triangle? Now just cut it in half in your head, and I want to just show you this, how it looks across the country. So you're looking at part of that triangle. If you look at the nation, you see it kind of works like that, right? It works in that triangle. You have the most kids in this full inclusion or 80% and more inside a regular class. Then the next group is 40 to 80% in a regular class, and then less than 40% in a regular class, and then out of district, if you look at the nation. Now again, what do you see in Hastings in New York?
For the out of district, does that include parentally placed?
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that you have a large percentage of kids out of district in Hastings, larger than most.
Does that include non-special ed kids as well, or just
No,
special ed kids?
just kids with IEPs.
What's the total of kids out of district, number-wise? The full number, do you know it?
18. I have percent up there. I have the number in there. I don't have the number off the top of my head. Yeah, you're a small district.
The difference would be 3 kids, 5 kids.
It's less than that, so.
But let me show you another, back to the OHI thing. Now look at this.
Yeah.
If you look at the nation and you look at children who are classified with OHI out of district nationally, it's 4%. In Hastings, it's 18% of students who are classified with OHI who are out of district.
Is any of that because the services aren't available in Hastings, or?
Sure. I mean, it could be.
This was the
Wait,
school year 20...
Hold on. This woman has been trying to talk, so go ahead.
This is just, it's going back, it's also, in my opinion, in a little bit, it's going back to the slide that you showed us previously. With the higher OHI number, it seems to me that the low LD and the higher OHI number actually supports what a lot of parents have felt in the district, where prior to the change in administration in special education, the district was highly resistant to classifying students with a learning disability. So our numbers have been very low, even if children prove that they have a learning disability.
That's okay.
And that, in addition to that, is the piece that what parents have also felt, that the 504s, which might have accommodated you, as you were saying, with ADHD, which are accommodations as opposed to services, the 504s in our district prior to the change in administration was not worth the paper it was written on, in the fact that nothing in the accommodations was actually being implemented during the school day for these children, who then either progressed to an OHI category or parents saw that that was the only way that they might actually get the accommodations that they needed, if not the services. And whether they even had learning disabilities on top of ADHD or OHI, but were never classified with them and never got services related to learning disabilities because they were refused classifications on those grounds. And so that we might have a lot of OHI kids who have a lot of learning disabilities are not receiving the services they need because those are still not written into their classification. And then we have parents who potentially are taking those kids out or putting them in other scenarios where they might receive the attention they need for whatever disabilities.
And this proves your point, because the kids who are out of district, this is the percentage are parentally placed.
Very well put.
Yeah, it was very well put. And so one of the things, the biggest thing you want to do for a child who's got a learning disability, the majority of kids with learning disabilities have as their issue literacy issues, and it's very clear that that needs to be built in here, and that's not been built in. And it's very clear. So I think with what you just said, building literacy with the new administration, I think you might see a change. So
that would be the hope.
Right. But no, it's very well said. And again, this is, you see that they're permanently placed, so it supports your point. I am going to go to here and say that our recommendation is to examine and refine the evaluation procedures for OHI and SLD, because that balance, just to look and make sure that that you're clear, and continue to build supports and services, because I know that the administration has been building more supports and services, and I know that parents who've had their children in those, there's not a lot, but there's a few, have been very happy, or at least we heard that they were. So keep building more supports and services around, what's your name, sorry?
Deborah.
Deborah, what Deborah said, and yeah. Okay.
The supports and services, is that something that's left up to the district to decide what that would look like, or is that something laid out in the report?
Ask that question again in a few minutes, because I think I've laid it out. But make sure I've laid it out to what you're asking. So give it a few minutes.
Are you, it doesn't look like it, but are you recommending that the CSE look at students who are classified as OHI and consider changing that classification?
No. I'm suggesting that you look at, it's part of the SOP on the Standard Operating Procedure Manual. How is somebody getting classified as OHI? What is the criteria? How is somebody getting classified as SLD? What is the criteria?
So going forward.
I'm saying looking at, yeah. I mean, anybody can look at any time they want, but our suggestion is moving forward. Okay, so now I'm going to go into instruction and what the services might look like. And I want to show you that this is your ELA scores for New York from grades 3 to 8, from 2012 to 2016. And the blue are students with disabilities in Hastings. The orange are students with disabilities in the state. The gray is all students in Hastings, and the yellow are all students in the state. Actually, I should have reordered this a different way. The way I want to describe it is, let's look at these two. You can see that Hastings is higher than the state in terms of kids with disabilities across the board. So I can just look at this one just because I'm here, but it's the same across the board. And that Hastings is higher than all students in the state, right? You see that? Mm-hmm. However, what we have written out in the report is that the discrepancy between kids with disabilities and the state, sorry, let's see if I can do this right. Students with disabilities Hastings and all students Hastings. The discrepancy or the gap between these two is larger than the gap between these two. So while you are outperforming the state, your gap is larger.
And that doesn't take into account all the children with disabilities and parents opting out of the test.
Correct. Right? That's a very important point. It does not take that into account.
The types of students that were opted out.
Correct. But again, you're not. But New York is doing a lot of opt out, not just Hastings, but yeah.
That number versus in other places.
Correct. It does not.
Because we have a high, right, that's exactly what I was going to say.
What were you going to say?
A higher opt-out rate than even...
Right. It does not take, I mean, there's no way to map that out. But the discrepancy is important. I mean, the fact that you are higher than the rest of the state is important and something to hold on to, which tells me that your discrepancy does not need to be that wide. I mean, if you can do this, you can do this. I think that everything that needs to be done here is so possible. I mean, because you're doing it in some places. You can do it in more places. And it's that collaboration. It's pulling it all together. It has a lot to do with literacy. So this is literacy. This is math. You're going to see the same issue in math, a little bit less of a gap.
Can I just ask you a question about the prior slide? Mm-hmm. And this may just be because we have a small sampling, but our students with disabilities, the test scores from 2014-15 dropped, it looks like 45%-ish to 2015-16. Do we have any explanation?
No, we're really wanting to show you a range because there's so few kids here. It could, just so you can see the trajectory more than the actual number, because a few kids in Hastings in one grade or a few, it is just this group of grades can shift the numbers a lot. All right, so math is the same thing. And then with literacy supports, we didn't see them outside of the elementary school, and we were told that the district used to have do a lot of work with Wilson. I don't know if that's accurate. We were told that by anecdotally, but it doesn't. Wilson doesn't matter. Wilson's one thing, but we did not see literacy supports in the district. So I think that would have changed those numbers a lot.
Can you be specific about what kind of literacy supports you would see? Like, are we talking about a K through 6 literacy coach, or what type of literacy supports?
So yes, let me get there in 1 second. Yes, I can. The other thing is we were also looking for behavioral supports, because that often gets kids so they can't read, or they're not being taught to read, or there's all sorts of issues around behavior. But we didn't, in terms of behavioral supports, and we were just looking for those supports that are on top of everything else. We saw that in terms of suspensions, First of all, very, very, very few number of kids are suspended in Hastings. That's a good thing. But when you looked at kids with disabilities versus kids without disabilities, no kids without disabilities might have had in or out of school suspension. Kids with disabilities, only out of school suspension. We also saw that, so the suspension practices were unclear. We also did not hear consistent use of what are called FBAs and BIPs, functional behavioral assessments and behavior intervention plans. We did not hear consistent use of them. We heard from people that they just didn't need to be used, but they're required by law if a child needs them. So it's part of IDEA. So we did not hear consistent use of those. Does anybody need me to explain what they are? No. Okay. So what we're
Lauren?
Yes, Jen, sorry.
I just wanted to chime in again around the functional behavior assessments and the behavior intervention plans. Laura did explain to us, I just want to give her some positive praise, that she's been working really hard to actually get implementation up for those, but there's been some kind of struggles at the building level. So really when we're talking about that, we're talking about inconsistencies at the building level, not at the special ed department central office, because they're working to get professional development in place for that, and they're really working to make sure that there's some more consistency at the building level, particularly the middle and high schools with regards to functional behavior assessments and behavior intervention plans.
Accurate. Yes.
When you talk about literacy supports and you were also talking about tiers, are you referring to like response to intervention?
I'll get there. That's what I'm going to talk about right now. Give me 1 second.
Can we just go back 2 slides? Just one sort of, maybe it's a bonehead question, but...
This one?
No, keep going. Keep going. Yes. What's the optimal picture in your mind? I see this graph and I see the spread, and I'm not sure that the proportional differences, just obvious to me that there's some obvious statistical measure here. So what is the outcome? What's the goal? The longer term goal of these?
I'll tell you what the ideal is. I can tell you what the ideal is.
Yeah.
The ideal, if you look at 2 pieces. One is special ed is supposed to level the playing field. It's supposed to make it so kids with disabilities can succeed as they would if they did not have a disability. And that's piece 1. Piece 2, if you look at across all the categories of disability, and you look at all the kids, about 85% of kids with disabilities are classified with an IEP do not have an issue with cognition.
Yeah.
So there should be no reason that they don't succeed as do their peers. There's a small number, maybe 15%, with intellectual disabilities who may or may not be able to. They may still be able to succeed as do their peers. So ideally, I'd like to see maybe 15% of kids with disabilities not meeting the same standard as their peers without disabilities. So that's an ideal.
Yeah, like a proportional difference between gray and blue that's 15% proportional, so that it's reflective of the overall level of learning of the district.
That's an ideal.
But I'm looking at this and I just needed to visualize what are we going.
But I want to be clear, I've never seen it.
No, I understand that. I needed clarification.
Okay, but I literally have never seen it. I would love to see it.
And is that consistent across both ELA and math? That ideal framework?
Yeah, because it's that. And I'm basing that ideal on the fact that 85% of kids with disabilities do not have issue with their cognition.
Understood.
A kid with a learning disability, by definition, has to have a typical intellect. By definition. I mean, there's a few intellectual disabilities, and some kids with autism, not all kids with autism have intellectual issues with intellect, but somebody with a learning disability, somebody with a behavior disorder, somebody with ADHD special ed should be leveling the playing field.
No, that's good. That's good. That helps me look at this and think about what we're going
But I want to be really clear. I've never seen it anywhere.
Fine.
I'd love to.
Sorry, on the functional behavior issue, can you clarify what she meant by the difference was with the building? What she meant by that? Is that the administration with...
Jen, do you hear the question?
I do.
Do you want to answer? You want me to?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. It basically came down to, it seems from what we were in our conversations with staff as well, that there's a good idea of how these should be implemented at central office, but there's a gap between central office and what they're trying to implement and what's actually happening at the building level with regards to this. We don't have exact information on if it's administration, if it's school psychology, or what the exact gap is. We just know that there's a gap there that we need to work to bridge. in making sure that students who are having behavior problems in the classroom have an SBA completed and then a behavior intervention plan to support that so that we know and can track data that interventions are happening and how the student is progressing with those interventions.
We were told
Does that make a little more sense?
We were told some people just didn't believe in it. And that's just not okay.
The middle school?
I'm not going to get into specifics. We were just told some people didn't believe in it. In the back, yeah.
Now looking back at this data about...
Can you speak up a little bit?
Now just looking at the data that you have here on the graph about assessments, did you look into anything specifically on elementary, middle, high school so we can see where those gaps are bigger in terms of performance? So we can kind of target where the biggest gap is happening?
So yeah, this is a very blunt look.
Right.
And
that's why my question is there, because you know when I look at it and say where are we having those biggest achieving gaps? Is the biggest gap in the elementary testing ages, or is it in the middle school testing ages? Where are we falling short in the biggest area? That's my question.
And I want to go to this now because this should help answer that question in a way. We don't have that data.
Okay.
I'm not saying the district doesn't have it, but I think one of the things that needs to happen is this formation of a whole tiered system that would include progress monitoring that would allow that question to be answered regularly.
Right, but RTI has to do with the process of getting the child classified.
No.
Yes, with getting to those tiers.
That's not what RTI should be for.
Classified. So I'm talking about the performance.
And I'm telling you that RTI should not be that. RTI has turned into that. So RTI, so hold that idea with RTI. So RTI, MTSS, it's all kind of the same thing. Response to intervention can be used to decide whether or not a child gets special ed services. But however, that's like the second piece of RTI. The first piece of RTI is, and this is kind of your RTI triangle, right? RTI, for those who don't know, is response to intervention. And the newer term is MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, same idea, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have this core instruction down here, and then you assume that some kids need more support. And then you give targeted interventions. Then you assume some kids need even more support, and you give more targeted interventions. That process needs to be in place in a strong way for it to be used the way you were describing it. Because if this process needs to be in place in a district, or preferably a district, it can be in a school, but it's much stronger if it's a district-wide practice. And then from there, you might be able to then use it to decide whether or not a child should be referred. But to start with it at special ed kind of misses the beauty of it, for lack of a better word. And I just want to let you know, we think Hastings needs to work on this. We don't think it's here. So Hastings has a good beginning tier, but no other. It has a good core instruction, tier 1, but we didn't see other steps. And so you can't use it for the special ed classification process because there's nothing there. Not systemically. There's stuff there in pieces. There's a lot of good pieces, but there's not a systemic practice. And so if you have this, and somebody asked earlier what would I look for in literacy, so I'd look for, like you have a literacy program in the elementary school, for example. And then there's a supplement to that you can use with some kids who might need more decoding support. And then there's even a more individualized supplement to that for those kids who still need more. And kids can go up and down that trajectory. And special ed can work within and without that trajectory. This is what we think that your system should work on, where we have the special ed director, the curriculum director, and the superintendent work to create this both academically and behaviorally. Then it can be used for your RTI special ed system. Does that make sense?
Laura?
Yeah, sorry, Jen, go ahead.
In review of documents, I wanted to point out that the elementary school actually had a very comprehensive way to document their interventions. They also have a reading specialist. They're the only school that has a reading specialist, which I think is critical to really developing a strong RTI or MTSS model. But again, I also want to point out there's been a lot of professional development that's coming down from central office, from the special education department, with regards to really helping schools develop this model. But I think a good starting point is to look at what the elementary school is doing because it can't just be at elementary. It really needs to go into middle and high as well. And I think that elementary has a really great foundation for that from the documents that I've reviewed. I don't know how they're being implemented, but what they have for documentation, the packet that they're using, how they're tracking data, how they're tracking literacy, and having that reading specialist really there to supplement, I think is a really great foundation that needs to be pointed out.
Thank you.
I was just wondering.
Can you speak up?
I was wondering about our curriculum director. Do we have one now? It just seems that it's always in flux.
We currently have a director of curriculum, but he's leaving at the end of the month. There's no replacement as of yet.
Right. So we've had how many in the last 4 years?
Well, since I've been here, there's been 3 in 5 years.
That's clearly impacting.
Sure.
I'm just wondering if maybe we could hold some questions just for the sake of time until the end of each segment, because you might be answering some of the questions that are coming and seeing you nod. I don't know how other people are feeling.
Yeah, time-wise, I'm almost there. Finish it up. Yes? Yeah. Keep going? I would say do what you need to do. Okay. All right, so our recommendations in this area is to, our findings I told you. Oh, there's one other finding is that, let me just make sure that's one other finding. So our findings, let me just go through these, that there's a gap between literacy and math between kids with and without disabilities, that there's not your multi-tier systems of supports, that literacy interventions are not available enough, specifically at the secondary level, and that the social emotional learning framework is not there specifically or also in addition to FBAs and BIPs. And the last finding is we found most students, and again, this is 1 year, students without disabilities had regents with advanced degrees, and we know that that's being moved away in Westchester, the advanced degree, but just to note that why there was that discrepancy, again, you'd want to see that level playing field. You'd want kids with and without disabilities to be going for the same high standard. And that we are not, and again, a small group of kids, but all the kids with disabilities weren't looking at four-year colleges the same way the kids without disabilities were looking. And our recommendations here are to develop your MTSS model. And so establish a framework and implementation plan with MTSS. Focus your special ed services on reducing that gap, leveling the playing field, focusing on literacy-based interventions, focusing on district-wide SEL curriculum and positive behavioral supports that include FBAs and BIPs. Provide opportunities for students to graduate having earned. Actually, we changed this one because we know that your regents and all is moving on. I didn't change this goal, but provide opportunities for students with disabilities to focus more on attending four-year colleges. And the last area.
I just want to make.
Yes, sir.
This is a small, but I think it's an important point. I think the phrase "reducing the gap."
Yes.
Is a phrase that can induce angina in the majority of parents in the district that are not in special education. As a parent of someone with special education needs, I think it should be potentially rephrased as raising the performance of children in special education. Our goal is not to reduce the performance of children who are not in special education.
We can word that. We can word that. I'll get it. That makes sense. Okay, the last section is on the community engagement. And we want to say that this was the area we found most, what's the right word, discrepancy, or between the families we talked to and the staff we talked to. It's like everybody was focused on the kids, but not trusting each other. There was a whole lot of, we don't trust the system, and it's like you were getting. I'm not going to say this. I'm going to get me in trouble. Let me just say it this way. While the positive relationship between families and the director was clear, because that is clear. Again, people spoke so highly of Laura. It was equally clear that there remained general tensions between families and school staff and specific tensions between SEPTA and the special ed department. And we just wanted to note, like, here's some things we heard from families, here's some things we heard from staff. It's like nobody is perfect here. So families said that there was negative interactions with schools, feeling of mistrust, constant battles. Not all teachers understand how to meet student needs. Lack of a system-wide approach, lack of communication. Those are all happening. Then you talk to the staff, they're always worried about losing their job. There's a pressure to make sure all parents are happy. They feel intimidated about providing their professional opinion. There's a culture of uncertainty, a culture of instability. So there's on both sides, I hate to use sides, but all parties are feeling it, is how I guess we should say it. And
can I ask you a question? The intimidation that's feeling that from parents or feeling that from other staff members, or?
I don't know the specifics. Yeah.
Was the uncertainty between staff as well across special ed to general ed?
This was the staff talking about the feelings in the district around all the tension. And
okay, so we don't know if that's just to families as you drew it, or just even within and across special ed and general ed.
No, I'm talking we talked to families of kids with disabilities.
Okay. And staff supporting them in the school.
In the school and in the district.
Okay.
I mean, district level and school level.
But for instance, feeling intimidated about providing their professional opinion, is that to other staff and the decision makers?
These are just thoughts that people had. I'm not going to be able to get into each one. I'm just my point here is that everybody's feeling it.
But I'm just
whether or not each thing is accurate or not.
No, it's just a very important distinction. If that lack of communication is happening within the school, and there's a designation of one curriculum.
No, these are families talking about special ed, and staff talking about families.
So this is special ed staff.
Special ed. No, we talked to. Who do we talk to? Special ed staff, principals. And again, I'm not gonna be that specific because I don't want to get it to a place where people can figure out who's talking.
No, that's not right. But it's a very important distinction.
Well, then push that detail aside and know that there's tension. A lot of tension. Hold on. And the tension, in our opinion, as outsiders. Everybody's kind of getting everybody else's way, and nobody's right, nobody's wrong, and there's the lack of trust. And I kept saying, you guys need a therapist as a district. Like, this is all pulled together because the people aren't. And I get the tension. There's been tension for the longest time, but like, there needs to be a way that people move forward and past it because people are holding on tight. All people are holding on tight to things, and there's got to be a sense of like moving forward because there's so much you guys can do. I mean, you guys have amazing possibilities here, and the passion we saw was insane. Like, and when we opened up to getting calls and emails because enough parents didn't think that we had enough contact with them. Oh my God! I mean, I have a file like. So many families calling because there's passion here. It's great. But like, if everybody could kind of focus their passion in one direction, because everybody, and the other thing is everybody's passion is about kids doing well. Like, everybody has the same goal. And that was so clear. And again, like I said before, not your norm. So I would hope you can use that. And I have some ideas on how you might be able to go about it. So, yes, in the back there?
Does this also include families with children that do not have special needs?
We did not talk to families. We did not talk to families of kids without disabilities. We did not. Not because of any reason except that was just not part of the scope of our work.
In the various schools that you've worked with, have you seen groups where, or situations where the district works with the parents on special education issues? Because there is no trust, and I don't.
Yes, I have.
Maybe, and if you think any of those would be helpful for us, any of those models, please feel free to share.
So let me show you a framework that we were thinking of. Well, let me just show you my recommendations, and then I'll show you a framework we're thinking of, because I have an idea, but I also can put you in touch with districts and principals who've really moved this. Because it's not uncommon for there to be a lack of trust, but it's not always common that everybody's focused on the right thing. And the capacity here is so great that it's sad that it can't be realized. I just imagine what you guys can do. It's mind-boggling. So again, we thought that you should work on building positive relationships, and just as a more tangible thing, that specific communication strategies need to be developed, because there's maybe just some structures in place, but hold that thought and let me go into our idea for how to help think about this. And I think that the district's going to have to hold some work around here. I think SEPTA can be a leader in holding some work around this, but this is a framework that educators use in districts, and there's been a lot of research around this framework. It is one of many, so I'm not saying this is the only one. It's just one way to wrap your head around things, because it's really hard to change culture. What we're talking about is changing culture, and that is so nebulous, and it's hard to touch. And so this is a framework that kind of helps do that. And the idea is there's these 4 different frames, and you have to think about attending to all of them. So, for example, the first frame would be symbolic. So you want to provide some symbols, like symbolic gestures around trust and communication. So, like SEPTA does this parent survey. I don't know if it's shared to the district officially. The coffee meetings are symbolic that's having. So just like putting in place, everybody put in place just symbolic things, knowing it's symbolic. Knowing it's not any more deep than that, but keeping some symbolism there to start. And then moving into some structural, and this is not in hierarchical order, you do all of them. You don't do one or another. Then putting some structures in place. Like what are some protocols for communication you can put in place? If a family, wants to come in, and a lot of families are feeling, or we were told that they were feeling confused and not trusting because they couldn't get information about their child. So make sure that the files are ready. Like the parents can just come and grab them and look at them easily. Make sure that the IEP information is out to the teachers earlier. There's a he said, she said around how many times a family and a teacher has talked. Well, put it down on paper. Like have a communication system. You can get it in your IEP system most likely. There's been more communication around missed services this year, and I know we heard from families that was really appreciated. So that's a structure that was in place that had some communication. And then the third idea is attend to the politics, attend to the power, attend to the leadership. Who's got leadership? A lot of the staff in Hastings were concerned about SEPTA and didn't know the range. Like, be clear. What are the roles and responsibilities of SEPTA? What are the roles and responsibilities around each of the special ed administrators? Just being very clear about where the power lies. And then the last one is giving humans these resources they need to do their work and to communicate well. So one of the ideas we have is to work with a third party to create structures that support positive relations. Because I don't know how, I think it might need to be somebody from the outside who comes in and sits down and helps people figure it out a little bit more. Disseminate IEP information to help teachers do their work, seek professional expertise from the community. You have a lot of the families I spoke to, there's amazing resources in your community. There's some highly qualified parents out there who could provide such support to the district. Use your people. So the idea, this is just, again, the symbolic, the structural, the political, human resource. If you kind of come up with a plan, a collaborative plan that attends to these ideas, then I've seen that in the research I've done, and I was a researcher when I was at the university, and I researched effective inclusive schools. That was my research. And we found that when the leadership and the communities focused in these 4 areas, that it changed, it shifted the district, or it shifted the school, depending. And it's not It's not simple, there's not one answer, it's messy, but I think if you guys were to attend to that, what you can do here would just be mind-boggling. And we're supposed to come back and review the recommendations, so I'm hoping that when we come back, we can see that. So that's it. I'm done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so, well, thank you so much.
Can we have public comment?
So could you just give them a
Thanks, Jen.
Now
Wait,
you're
hold on.
going to stick around. Make sure that stuff happens. Like, what are we going to do? Like, what?
So our responsibility, our requirement is to review in 2 years the implementation of the recommendations. But I know that you are shifting superintendents, shifting board, and you're not going to decide tonight which recommendations you're going to implement. So maybe being a thought partner around that, and Laura can call whenever she wants, and we'll be back to do an official review in 2 years. But we're here. We're now here. We're your critical friends.
And I'll just add on to that. The board is required, it was supposed to be at the next board meeting, but we put it off till
Yeah, it's
July.
been shifted. It's been mutually agreed upon because of the changing superintendent and changing board. Originally, it was supposed to be the next board meeting. We'd come back with what recommendations the board would want to implement and which ones they might not, with an explanation as to why. That has now been put off until the first board meeting after the reorganization meeting. So the reorg meeting is in July, and I believe the next board meeting after that is in August, currently. So you should expect an August board meeting where the board comes back with which recommendations will be implemented. So it gives the summer pretty much for the new board, new superintendent to come on, go through the report, work with Laura. Laura can work with Lauren to kind of hash out and unpack the report.
And these will be things that we're told about.
Yeah. Yeah, so in August they'll be presented, and then I would assume on the website or whatever else for information. Yeah.
Laura, did you want to say something?
I did. So I just wanted to thank Lauren. It's been great working with you. We spent many, many hours since in the past year collecting as much data as we can. She's very thorough. I think, you and Jen have done a great job. I look forward to the recommendations from the board and looking at it as an action plan. What's better than that to create all these great things. I do want to just say one thing, the final thing about the community. I love what I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm going to try. I wouldn't be doing this job if I didn't love it. I'm a parent of a child with special needs first, and then I'm a director of special education. I just can't emphasize enough that we have to move past this trust, and we have to work together. And we're just going to keep spinning our wheels, and we're going to be working in one direction, and parents are going to be working in another direction. And if we can't find that way to come together, and I'm not asking you to trust over me, because it does take time. But I think we need to start that process, because I'm working really hard, the staff's working really hard, the district is working really hard, and the parents are working really hard. And like Lauren said many times, we all have that same goal. I mean, as a parent, I'm my son's biggest advocate, but I'm respectful, and I think I'm reasonable. And I think you have teachers here that love your children, that they would not be doing this if they did not care about your children. Are we perfect? No. I'll be the first one to say when I make a mistake. But I think we have to find a balance where it's okay to make mistakes, it's okay to learn from each other, but that's how we form a positive relationship. And so moving forward, that's all I'm asking about.
So if anybody wanted to make another comment or ask a question or kind of...
I just want to ask a question. Does the full report include recommendations of how to change things? Because these were sort of big things of, we don't like the gaps, the kids with special needs are not performing particularly well here. So are there, in the report, how do we address that as a district? Or is it just that the Board of Education would make a decision that, yes, we're interested in progressing on this matter? Like, I'm not quite sure what the level of what the board is accepting and whether there are more details in the full report.
There's definitely more details in the report, but let me give you a sample. Like, we are saying build the MTSS model. We're also saying provide literacy supports, but we're not going to say get this program. We won't say that. And we're steering clear of saying who should do what, because we think that should be a district decision. So we're giving overarching, as much detail as appropriate. But in some places we don't want to give detail because it has to be Hastings specific. But that you need literacy supports, yes. That you need an MTSS model, yes. What that should look with, we can steer you towards examples, but it can look so many different ways. There's no one right way. So we steered clear of saying things where there's no one right way.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think as having seen the whole presentation, I think there's so much in here that does need to be sort of like, okay, if we want to build the RTI, so it's in all the schools and using what's going on well in elementary school as a block. I mean, the board doesn't have that expertise to even begin to drive that discussion. So what we have to do is have and I think that's one of the reasons that we moved to having the new superintendent be in place and have the sort of team going forward be the ones to really say, this is what works for us and the people that we have right now. So, I mean, I'm thrilled that we're able to have a little bit more time to have those discussions. I think they'll be more meaningful if they're not rushed, and that we definitely get a chance, I think, to have everybody get a moment to really digest what's in this report, pull out, because we're also going to have to tier. I mean, I don't think we can jump into doing everything that's recommended all at once, and so we're going to have to prioritize, like, okay, this is, we can spend the resources here, and right now we don't have a director of curriculum, and that's sort of been put on hold for a little bit. So that will be a big challenge for us, because that's a sort of a key piece of the sort of overarching, how are you building curriculum and instruction so that it really does include everybody and works for all kids with whatever they bring to the table. So I think it's going to be really challenging. But I would expect that over the next month and a half or so, there'll be a lot of conversations with Laura and a lot of conversations with the building principals and some teachers and the building level faculty, the department chairs and things like that. Everybody kind of has to get involved and really work to pull this one forward. So,
when does the new superintendent start? I'm sorry.
July 1st.
So how, it's a shame that he couldn't give this presentation because I feel like so much of this is going to be about how he's going to want to address these things. And obviously he'll read
You can see it, it's being filmed.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and trust me, he watches everything we do.
It just seems like it's going to be his baby in a lot of ways, too.
It definitely will be his baby in a lot of ways. So, and I think that his background certainly will help him, jump right in quickly. Yeah. So, but anyway, so thank you to your firm and for coming tonight and for all the work you put in recently.
Earned your money, Lauren. Thanks. Thanks, Jennifer.
For all the parents who participated as well, thank you. So,
Bye.
Bye, Jen.
Bye, Jen.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
See ya.
Okay. So next on the agenda is public comment. So if there's anybody who did want to get up and say something, sort of the usual procedure, which is you get up and you tell us who you are and your name, and then make your comment.
I have to share. So I'm Jennifer Cunningham, 43 Warren Street, and I should just point out that what I'm planning to say tonight is now unscripted in the effort of moving forward, but it also represents my own personal views and not that of anyone else or any other organizations. I did want to thank Dr. Katzman, Urban Collaborative, the Special Ed Office, and the district for efforts to evaluate and address the longstanding concerns about our special ed program. I think there are a couple points that I'd like to emphasize, and I think Tim's question brought it out. Not to point your question out because it's something that's come up repeatedly. And I think until tonight, we've not had a Board of Ed member that has any personal experience with special education. And I think it speaks to some misunderstandings that is widespread beyond this room. It goes across communities about what special education and what it means to be a special education student. Having a learning disability does not mean you have an intellectual disability or the inability to learn and be successful. There are innumerous number of successful individuals with learning disabilities, just to name a few. Anderson Cooper, Richard Branson, the head of Virgin Atlantic, Steven Spielberg, Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, they all have dyslexia. They, despite the fact that they had a miserable, horrible experience in school, were able to overcome their disability. I think what parents want for their children is not to have a miserable, horrible experience. And while those successful individuals were able to overcome their disability, the sad reality is the majority of individuals with learning disabilities, if not given the proper supports, do not go on to a college education, have higher rates of incarceration, and have a numerous number of other bad outcomes that no one wants for their children. So I think it's important that we remember that, both the Board of Ed as well as the community, to understand that these are children that are just as capable of general education students of being successful. And I think when we saw that slide about the discrepancy of our students with disabilities underperforming on state assessments, students failing state assessments. Imagine your child coming home having failed a state assessment, even though they have an IQ in the 90th percentile. That's inexcusable. And I think the fact that so many of our students, for years of knowing failure, never even dreamed about going to college, despite the fact that they have an average or above average IQ, is also disgraceful. And to your point, I think, about healing, I think we all want to heal. The concern I have is that there's never been an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. And it's one thing to try your hardest, and I think special ed parents, for the most part, myself included, are incredibly grateful for the amount of effort and the work and the dedication of our teachers and staff who are trying their best in a system that was really not set up to help special ed kids in this district. And they are incredibly grateful. I send a thank you note every time, oh shoot, I forgot to do this year, after a CSE meeting, because I know it's painful. No one wants to sit there for an hour. This is the first year I forgot. I'm sorry. I'm going to do it when I get home. Parents are really grateful for that. They understand their children are more difficult to teach. They appreciate the efforts. I think what's been disappointing and really frustrating is that there hasn't, at least in the former administration, there wasn't that dedication and that desire to do the right thing. The current culture is one of a staff and an administration that is really trying the hardest, and we appreciate that and are so grateful for that. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that the former administration did not use a culture of fear and intimidation, failed to address parent concerns, failed to address teacher concerns. They weren't listening to anyone in the community, and that's just not the administration, that's this Board of Education. I had numerous conversations with many of you. This never should have occurred. It never should have come to this. This would have, could have, should have been addressed 10 years ago when concerns were brought to the overwhelming majority of Board of Ed. What makes me very sad, I mean, my daughter is going to be fine, and hopefully the children of the parents who are still in this district, they will have a chance to be successful. But how many kids left this school district having been failed by our inability, your unwillingness to listen to their concerns? And I think those families deserve an explanation, deserve an apology, and a minimum deserve the recognition that they weren't being crazy and yelling. And you know, when I tell my kids, clean up your room, it starts off with, hey, you need to clean up your room. Doesn't happen. hey, you know, the room needs to be cleaned up, go clean your room up. Next time around, that room's still not clean, get up there and clean your room now, or you're going to be a consequence. And then by, you know, an hour later, I'm screaming, and the kids look at me and say, why are you screaming? Mom's crazy. When you don't listen, people start raising their voices. None of us have liked raising our voices. I hate public speaking. I hate it. But what choice do we have when we feel, and this is not about my child. I can advocate for my kid. This is about the kid whose parent has high school education or who dropped out of high school. The parent who can't afford the private evaluation, who can't send their child to a private school. Those kids were left behind. And I just think that's a shame. And I think we need to move forward, but I think we need to remember what happened in this community so that it never happens again. Thank you.
Jason Job, 43 Warren Street. That's a tough act to follow, and thanks for having us here. I'd like to thank first Lauren for presenting that very relevant study. That was wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Katzman. That was great. I'll go a little bit into just kind of, I don't know, my feelings, and it won't take very long. I wanted to echo what Jennifer just said about acknowledgement. I think there's been a tremendous lack of acknowledgement here, and the report broached it. I'm not sure how much you know or how much you weren't willing to say. I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I think that's the major issue. Some of the stats were nice, but one kid can skew 30% to a 35%, and then we're left with not a whole lot of relevancy. But the one thing that I think is relevant is that there's been a culture, and not the current administration, the current director of special education, but some of the members of the current board and our seating superintendent have fostered a very difficult special education environment, one where we just weren't taken seriously. And this has been a very nice meeting, and I hope that this is recorded, and I hope the recording is kept, because I'd like people to see how constructive this can be. And then guarantee those same people who might be watching this that these meetings were never like this until this one. So I agree they were never that positive or close to this constructive. It was simply rabble yelling at walls. So I'd like to also remind folks that this didn't come about as a blip or a news cycle small thing. This is a large thing. So what brought us here, let's remember, we are on the same page kind of. But what brought us here was something that's not on the same page. It was a federal lawsuit brought against, it's pretty public at this point, and it was brought, and part of what we did was to hire the doctor here to provide this study. That probably wasn't wished by many of folks here who might have been named as defendants. Regardless, I think everyone watching this needs to understand the difficulty just to get this audience and just to get the presentation that we saw and to get the words that we saw that can allow us to heal. I think saying we need to heal without those things is empty. And I know you didn't mean it that way, but without that, it's just the bully asking the bloodied-nosed kid, hey, will you please forgive me? So I think there needs to be some acknowledgement. I think there needs to be a change in culture. I think there needs to be greater transparency. And along with, I'd say, the long road to hoe that it's taken to get here, I'd like to thank three people who, without their efforts, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have, I believe we wouldn't have the positive democratic flowering within Hastings that I saw with the Board of Elections, or excuse me, the Board of Education elections recently. That never happened. We wouldn't have seen action taken with the Director of Special Education. We wouldn't have seen greater voices related to the superintendent's position. And without these three people, we simply wouldn't be here. And certainly the study would not have been presented. It simply wouldn't have happened. And those three people are Nina Siegel-Kennedy, and Mia Johnson, and Jennifer Cunningham. I thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Mia Johnson, 127 Fairmont Avenue. I want to thank Dr. Katzman for her report. I just want to say that I hope that the experience that I've had and that my son has had going through the Hastings School District is one that many more special education students will experience. It's always been so heartbreaking for me to have one experience and yet to hear from so many other parents of their experience. My son is valued and he is acknowledged for his intellect and his curiosity and his quirkiness and his sense of humor. He has friends. His grades are appropriate to his abilities. And I would just hope that other people can have a similar experience and that the district is bold and ambitious. And I know not everything can happen at once, but I just hope that we take these recommendations and really just, knock it out of the ballpark, and just, if it has to take time, let's not settle. Let's really just get this right and work together and just make this great for all of our students, because it benefits our kids and all of the kids in the district. And I just really hope for some passion and ambition and vision. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Lowengart, and I'm at 9 Amherst Drive. I am speaking today as somebody who had my daughter's first IEP meeting the day before Laura took her job as director of special ed. So, and I have to say, I worked very hard to make sure that I knew everybody in that room and I had all the information. I was best friends with Alexine, making sure that I was getting all the documents, and I was very earnest in my process. And I will say I walked into that room, and from what I had heard from parents before me, it was the exact opposite of the experience that I had. The doors opened wide, everyone in the room was collaborative, everyone worked together. And my daughter was unanimously classified after a year, the whole year before, everyone telling me that there was nothing going on. And I really could feel the difference in the air because of Laura's taking on this role. And I've been so appreciative to all the people who work in Hillside with her. Everybody is doing their absolute best job, and they care about her, and they want to understand her better. But, I will say that the report is so, as a parent, this is a very hard thing to hear, because these are the things that we live every day. And it comes in the form of teachers whispering to you in the hall after a meeting what they really think, but they didn't necessarily want to say. It comes in the form of people not entirely understanding your child's disability or classification, and you being the person that needs to be sending links and information and letting them really understand what it feels like in her body to have a language processing disorder. And I think that when we say move forward, it seemed like a lot of the conversation is about the parents moving forward, but I do think that we need, as a community, to understand that the culture is such that even as a parent who comes in wanting to be so collaborative and open to the process, and I listen to every single provider she works with and hear what they're saying, they're not talking to each other. There are things that happen in one group that are not happening in another. There are kids who have the same issues who are getting very different types of services and qualities of services. And I think as a parent, what this feels like is you're constantly in a black hole. And I think that's why a lot of us do have those blinders up. These are our children. And we are just trying to make sure that everyone's coming together to work with us and with them. And I hope that this report allows us all to move forward in that way, because I don't think there's anybody who doesn't want to work that way, but we need the schools to come together more. We need that culture change. We need that culture shift. And I think you'll find that most of the parents, especially the ones who have moved into the system with Laura at the helm, are having positive experiences, but there are still tremendous holes. And just know that we are waiting, we are willing. We will work with the schools to make this happen. Whatever the teachers tell us to do, we will do. We will dance on our heads, we will read up on things, we will do more work at home to help our children succeed. We will take them wherever they need to go. We will do extra projects. There's all these things that parents of kids with special needs, just like parents of general ed kids, want for their children. And I just really want to emphasize the moving forward together. And truly understanding each other, and also understanding that this is a culture shift that if it comes from the school will easily trickle into the community. So thank you.
And to complete the troika, right? Nina Siegel Kennedy, 35 Fraser Place. I'm hoping this is one of the last times I have to address the Board of Education about special education. I want to thank Dr. Katzman, my sisterhood that's been with us through the process, and certainly Laura, who's become an integral part of giving hope back to a lot of us. I shared with Laura recently that my son, who is going to be 12 for the first time about a week ago, said that he didn't hate ELA anymore. And that was because he, who has a language-based learning disability, we actually made the request last year with Laura, and she agreed to take him out of special education because the services he was getting were really so, for lack of a better word, subpar, that we chose to put him with a really amazing general education teacher. And now he skips to class. And while I have tremendous admiration for this teacher, I also have sat with Laura in an office with a special education teacher in tears saying, tell me what to do, I just don't know how to teach your child. And so I was thinking about what Kate said, and we're all experts in the room. We don't mind being experts in the room. We take pride in being experts in the room. We like to reach back and be experts and help the new families that are coming up. But we don't want to be the only expert in the room. And now we've got Laura as another expert in the room. We're really hoping the professional development piece, the tiered instruction that you're talking about, the literacy supports, and some of the more consistencies through schools will allow us to really create the kind of culture and excellence that my son's English teacher set as a very high bar this year. It's really the kind of English I think he should have been getting since he entered school. So I'm grateful and I'm thoughtful and thankful for the future. I think I do want to say that the issue for culture change and acknowledgement go hand in hand, because I don't think any of us have really heard that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any board comments? Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming. I think this is the beginning of a new process. Was not really prepared to go back in time. I was kind of really coming tonight to hear what we need to do to move forward. It sounds very much as if there is a, the blame on the board. I've been the president of the board for 7 years. I certainly feel badly that this is your view of the board. I think that the board that I have worked with from my side of the table has always been supportive of what has been recommended. We are, in particular myself, and I speak for most of us, do not have an expertise in special education instruction, and so we don't question the things that come out of that department. And when we hear individual comments, I don't really think that most of us have a good framework, nor is it really the board's activity, except to say we as a district need to address this. And I think that the board, from my experience, has always wanted to support the special education families as we want to support the families of all our students. So I'm regretful, and I feel badly. I'm sorry if I don't know what I might have done that you are referring to in particular, if there is something you're referring to, if you think it's just a general, I don't know, a general attitude, but I don't think you know me very well if you think that my attitude is to push down on special ed families and children. And I would say that. But I think I would really like to move forward, and I hope that we can do that. And I guess that, what I say will never be enough for some people, but truly from my heart, I really do want to move forward and want to do what we can to support families. So thank you all for coming.
Let me just step in as well and just say one thing. And I know I've spoken to some of you really over the last, 3 to 6 months. And I recall being the appointed member to fill Lindsay Hicks's seat and sort of learning very quickly how little I knew about special education, and I will be the first to acknowledge that I still know very little, and I won't superimpose my own experience with every other board member, but I think it's probably fair to say that the collective knowledge of the board pales with the collective knowledge collected on the other side of the dais. But with this report, with the data in the report, the commitment of all of you and the commitment of all of us and the beginning of communication, I'm confident that selfishly my knowledge and my experience is going to draw from your experience, and it's going to go way up. And I'm confident that that exists for the other 6 members of the board, certainly with Christina here as well. And I think that maybe it's a lofty hope, but I do hope that not, overnight. It will take time. It is July. It is August. But I think that there is the will and the ability to become a model district and become a model district of understanding, of cross-understanding. And so that's my very simple hope. And I think it is unfortunate, obviously, the bad history. I think that bad history reflects so much misunderstanding. And I really want to hit that point. Like, I don't know each of you, but I know lots of you, and I know lots of you in an individual context, and I know that every single person in this room is a good person. Truly, I believe that. I think every single person in this room, I categorize people that I work with. Do I think they're good parents? Because in finance, I can't necessarily judge whether I think they're good people, but do I think they're good parents? And I know everybody in this room, whatever their experience has been around the special education discussion, qualifies as a good person and as a good parent. And I think that there's so much misunderstanding that has occurred. I think it's important to accept that and recognize I really do not believe at the core of my fiber that there's malicious intent. And I think that we're going to hopefully draw a line in the sand and really move forward. And I think the report is to a degree a blueprint. And that's my ask, and that's my hope, and I look forward to moving forward. And I don't mean to speak on behalf of the board, but I do want to wrap the night. I mean, it's been a long night. It's already 9:30, but I want to wrap the night in a way where certainly I express, my excitement of moving forward, and hopefully I speak for everybody else that we're really in a good place to move forward. So, thank you.
So we're going to move on now to the business portion of the meeting, so stay if you like, but...
Eileen? Yeah. Can we take a bathroom break?
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
7 now.
I saw that email, by the way. Your email to Denise. And
Did you think I was leaving?
I just, so, you know, like having another one of these days at work where I'm like, wow, is this day ever going to end? Because it started bad and it keeps getting worse. And then I saw this email, I'm like,
Hi, thank you. Which is actually really good.
and after that, and I get home, I don't know, it's not NYCFC. Commercial. Thursday.
That's my next thing. Oh, I have a thing tonight too when I get home. I was going to do it here before the meeting.
I'm going to pour a very large. You guys all getting this tax thing? This what? 2017 assessment. It's going up.
It's going up what?
3 to 4%. So I got one, and I was like, what the hell?
You mean from your reassessed values that they
From
just
your
did?
reassessed, your 2016 was your reassessed, which was essentially a rebasing altogether. I just got something in the mail today. My 2017 is a bump from my 2016, which is very different from the way I was like assessments worked in the past, where you got
I didn't think they were doing a reassessment every year.
and it helped. I can't afford to live here at.
All right, so I think we're going to take this a little bit out of order because one of our board members is out of the room right now. Why don't we move to the personnel section? Were there on the appointments, retirements, leaves of absences, all those things, were there questions anybody had? Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the personnel section A, B, C, and D as with the exception of the assistant principal's right, as a motion to approve. Thank you, Jen.
Second.
And a second, Donna. All right, all those in favor? Good timing, Lisa. We're going back. We did personnel. We're going to go back to business. So, did you have things you wanted to pull out?
Yeah, there were a few things. Maureen, I did get some of your emails. I read them right before.
I was driving back to
Okay, sorry. One that's sort of a dumb one. The one about framing.
Yeah.
It looked like the two numbers didn't add up correctly.
You know what? That we did send them our tax exempt certificate, so we would not pay for the tax or whatever.
So that was the
yes.
differential. Okay. Another question on the BOCES contract. I saw there was a line for iReady, and it was hard to tell.
No, we're not.
Okay, the line is there.
Year by year.
So we're not
right.
Okay, great. So we're not buying any iReady.
Right.
And then the other question I had was about the budget transfer. And my question was, there were two budget transfers. One from, I think, one was within special ed, but the one I was more interested in was the one to pay for, I guess, the bleachers or something over at the Burke of $34,000, and it was coming out of instructional salaries. So my question was, I guess we're approaching the end of our fiscal year, and I'm assuming there's surpluses in certain ones, and I guess my concern with, I'm always like, let's stay far from the classroom.
Right.
So I guess my question is, how much money would remain in instructional salaries in that line item
that may be extra at the end of the year? And are there other categories that may be a better place from which to pull this money?
Well, so to your point, it's the end of the year, and now we're pretty, I think when we made these recommendations, we knew that there were a couple additional building items that we weren't going to be able to do over the summer because some of the summer projects we had planned to do are now escalating in cost. So being we had some money left over in our general budget, the recommendation was just to move money out of different categories. At the end of the year, all the money drops to the bottom and goes to fund balance. Either is rolled to the next year to balance the budget, or is designated to different reserve funds, or goes to the unappropriated fund balance. So it was just that there was money available at this time of year in that particular account, but it really wouldn't have, I could have pulled it from other areas as well.
So how much, by the way, is this, I was looking at the monthly expenditure report, and the numbers there, is that how much money is left in each of those line items?
It is, but there's a lot of times on the salaries, we only encumber like actual full-time salaries, but people who are per diem, coaching and all that, it gets expended in the month it's paid. So when you look at the unencumbered balance for the month, sometimes it could look higher than what in actuality it's going to be at the end of the year, because there's some categories that, like I said, are paid out toward the end. They're paid out in June, like a lot of the stipends and the last half of Schedule Bs and things. So a lot of times you won't see that shift. So it may appear you're looking at April that there's more money available, that there's a higher level of unencumbered funds in one of the categories, but by the end of the year that money will be moved.
Well, let me ask you, so if we take the $34,000 out of instructional salaries and then we pay whatever salaries, what's your, and again, not to hold you to this at all, what do you guess is going to be the balance, say, on June 30th in that line item?
In that particular line item,
because again, that one I care about. Like, what if, I'm thinking, what if next week a teacher has an injury and is out?
We
and
would definitely be able to
places?
cover it. We definitely have enough money in our teachers' salaries that if that were to happen, we would be able to replace.
So that's this line, though, right?
Yes.
Instructional
Lisa, we can always move something from
into that line,
into that line from somewhere else if she needs to.
But let me just, so to go back to the question from before, what would your best guess be on how much would be left in that, June 30th?
I think there's still a few $100,000 left in that.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't know if we were cutting it so close, but if we have a cushion, and I understand we can always do budget transfers, but I'd rather, not have to transfer multiple times.
And honestly, I think we've already said this. This year we had some, I definitely feel we definitely had a lot more, not cushion, but we had some savings in different areas. I think next year, that would be, I don't expect to have that type of cushion anywhere.
Okay. And the money in this line is going to pay for instruction that happens before June 30th?
Correct.
It's not for any summer work or anything?
No. Okay. Everything starting July 1 comes out of next year's budget.
Okay. All right, but as long as you feel that
and we definitely had money that that actually was planned and will be used in the last week in June for curriculum development for teachers. So everything that...
Is that the Gravity Goldberg?
Well, no, there's different things that go. I don't know which exactly... There's different work that happens from the department heads. I think the Race Matters Committee is doing some work that last week, the guidance counselors. So any money or any requests that have come in for work for our staff of teachers or any needs that they may have is definitely been accounted for.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so everything's fully funded then? All the requests are fully funded?
Yeah, so anything in any type of if something were to bubble up, like say if they were like, oh, we need some additional time, like just say if in fact teachers felt they needed some additional days at the end of June to work together, we would be able to support that.
Are we looking at line 2110? Is that what this conversation is relating to?
But that actually has a lot of other, that's not only instructional salaries, that's a lot of other items rolled in there.
Okay, but that's great, but everything that's been asked for and all that is fully funded?
Yes.
Wonderful, okay. I think that's all my questions.
Okay.
Then can I have a motion to approve items 1 through 18?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Okay. Anything with the minutes? We have 2 sets of minutes from the 16th and the 30th, either one. Okay, then can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. And all those in favor? Okay. Community Leaders Group?
We do the placement and CSE and CPSE.
That part didn't?
Yep.
Okay. On the minutes, we did those. Community leaders group. Did you go?
No, actually, the only other board member there was Gab. No, she's not here.
Surprise job.
But she was a board member.
She was a board member at the time, that's right. Anyway, there was, it was little lightly attended, but there were people from the foundation there talking about their end-of-the-year spring event. It was very successful. They did award their grants. They're going to come on the 20th to present them to the board for acceptance and approval. There will be 2 new co-presidents of the foundation next year, Baron Lerner and Deb Tarracone.
Oh, that's great.
Only the
That's
one-year
a great
term,
duo.
from what I understand. Yeah.
That's great.
So I think Susanna Stain plugged in. She's been trying to remove herself, but I think she's treasurer next year, so they haven't let her go totally yet. And Jackie Weissman was there from the PTSA, and she said her goodbyes to everybody was saying goodbye, basically, because everybody's stepping down. As you know, we have 2 new co-presidents there for next year.
Do you know who they are?
Yes, Ann Cunningham and Ann Melvin are the 2, right?
Yeah, Ann Melvin was sitting
Melvin
over
was in
there.
here. I think
And
Ann
actually,
was in the back.
Cunningham was in the back. Yeah, she has a short blonde hair
Yes.
in back here.
But the PTA, she talked about the grants and that you still have money available, so a lot of people were ears perked up when they talked about that. We talked about some ideas. As soon as that question came up about money, all the ideas started flowing. Gail said, we'd love to redo the middle school auditorium.
Dance studio, or dance studio.
Do we have any kind of ballpark figure on what that would cost, even just to like level it out and open it up?
Or something.
Pardon me?
3 million. Upwards.
3 million or so? Yeah.
For your basic.
PTSA is sitting on money, but you know.
Yeah, to start. But she also talked about PTSA was suggesting maybe looking into this room. They would be willing to look in money for renovating this room.
And then I heard also
Jackie
some, the teacher lounges also,
Yes,
I heard were.
teacher lounge as well. But I think the foundation's helping some of that.
The discussion about this room actually came up because it's, I mean, I don't know how you all feel. I think it's sort of depressing and awful. But I know that after, I'm sorry, it's the fluorescent light, it's the whole thing.
Tell us how you really feel.
Well, no, but the feeling that it engenders is that it's an us and them kind of thing.
Yeah,
And
we've actually talked about renovating this room.
but I'll just throw out a different idea that I know Gab and I had chatted briefly about, is that, once we had the meeting where Tony was sworn in the library, it was very lovely in the library. So Gab and I were even chit-chatting about, wouldn't it be nice to have our meetings there? And she said, I guess it hadn't been because the library was icky, but then the library was redone. So anyway, that's, again, I guess before decisions are made on whether to renovate or not, at some point, maybe at the reorg meeting, we can discuss possibly having our meetings at the library.
Makes sense. But there's also, as an aside, we talked about redoing this room to make it more functional.
Yep.
Either and as a boardroom and as additional instructional space that might be interesting.
And I think the PTSA also very much wanted to
they
put
should
some
talk
work
about
into the honor roll, because they said it's a
Updated.
little dilapidated, and obviously we want to honor and add more names of the residents who should be honored.
I think that is a specific war. I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's memorial to people who died in a specific war. I don't think it's something
All
we would
wars.
keep. Yeah, I don't think it's all
What does it
wars.
say
I
on
think
the
Whatever, it would be done, with whatever.
What does it say on the bottom, Doug? Right there, behind Maureen?
Well, Mr. Passarella's there, I think.
But I mean, I do think that this gentleman's name should be put back.
Well, that's. So in addition, we had the youth council rep
Yeah,
there
just
talking
fix
about
it.
their.
Okay, is this the thing that used to be in the back of the
Yes.
auditorium?
Yes.
Yes, it was in the back of the auditorium.
But nobody saw it, so that's why it was moved here.
He's alive.
Anyway, so.
Okay, anyway, we also had youth council representative there today. She talked about the year summary. They had a lot of initiatives going on this year. They were actually honored at the Martin Luther King breakfast this year as well, which was really nice. So they spoke about some of their year-end things, and they're having some potluck end-of-the-year dinner to celebrate. We talked about the new board members being sworn in tonight, and principals did talk about some of the things coming up in high school prom and awards and graduation and things like that. So,
Okay, thank you. Thank you for going.
no problem.
Wait,
We have
do
two
the new
students.
do the new board members know about sitting on the stage?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I do know about that, and unfortunately, I've got to be at a charity event. I've already been yelled at by Sarah, so.
Okay, yeah, we sit on the dais at graduation, so.
Okay, no, I didn't.
I'm actually going to sit in the audience just to be with my family.
6 o'clock.
Thursday, the 22nd.
We could.
We could do that later.
Yes.
I just want to make sure they knew that it's on their radar.
So the next thing we have are student reports. So we have two students here tonight. So that's the first thing to report on.
I'd like to introduce Elliot, who is going to be my successor. I'll still be here for the beginning portion of next year, and he'll start coming with me, and then he'll end up taking over somewhere mid next year. So, do you want to introduce yourself?
I'm Elliot Reese-Giovanti, and I'm really looking forward to being on the board. Liaison. Yeah.
What year are you?
Thank you.
And what year are you?
Sophomore.
Okay.
Who do you have for English?
At Abrams.
You know him?
Although, I'm taking AP next year, so I
Oh, right.
might,
Okay,
I might
good.
have-
You're the inaugural.
I have a 50-50%
Oh, true,
chance.
true. All right, all right. That's better.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And I will say, I believe Elliot was one of the students who was key to creating that, tell me the name of the European thing, the team.
You came and presented on it.
The Euro Challenge team, was it, yeah?
Yeah, and you were one of the key people
Yeah,
in
that
even
was,
getting that created, so.
Here's another claim to fame, his hexadecimal system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yes,
been
I
there.
remember that before. That was
I
quite a
still don't know what you
presentation.
were talking about.
But we're going to do everything in hexadecimal next year, okay?
The budget, too.
Yeah, right.
Oh, that'll be fun. Okay, welcome aboard. Old business, we have the date for the organization meeting, and it is an organization meeting. It's not a reorganization meeting, just saying.
I have a question about that, though.
Shoot.
The organization meeting is a public meeting.
Yes, they're all
But
public
the
meetings.
retreat is not.
That's right.
Is that, what
So what
is
we
that?
will do, what we do usually on that first day, we have the first meeting technically of the next school year is the organization meeting, and we appoint officers and we swear in new members, and then we appoint all kinds of, like the banks and the newspapers we use, and all kinds of sort of mundane business, standard business. That usually is about a 15-minute meeting. We often have a business meeting right after that where we would vote on any contracts and other things, that late-breaking news that Maureen has, anything else, any appointments, personnel appointments, and other things. Those are all just regular business meetings in a way. The retreat is totally different. So we will go and have those public meetings, we will adjourn, and then we will go off. Or maybe stay, who knows what we're doing. But that's a it's not an executive session. We're going to start at 5. So.
Is the retreat new, or is it done every year?
Well, we've done them in the past.
In different ways. We've done them in different
ways. Usually, we've never done them at the same time as the organization meeting, but because we have a new superintendent,
right.
And we have to get, sort of some, legs underneath us, we're starting really early. Okay. I actually think it was a good idea. And then last fall, I thought it was a good idea, just because it took us so long to schedule it over the course of the summer that we ended up having it in August or not in August, September, October. So
anything you need during the summer.
Okay. All right. So we did talk about having our meetings be on Tuesdays, and
we need to pass a resolution on the board meeting dates, since it's not the one that's required to get that one vote on July 12th. So.
Oh, we do?
On this?
Oh, so we want to do that, so old business, we have to do a resolution then?
Right.
Okay, all right. Then can I get a motion to approve July 12th, 5 p.m. as our organization meeting date?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? That's it. Okay, this is kind of a crazy looking document, but yeah.
Is this a calendar that we were going to vote on now?
We don't vote on the calendar, but we
already did the calendar.
And I was going to ask on this.
It's the meeting dates, Jody.
Just selfishly, Joel and I are actually figuring out various vacation plans during the next week. So are these? We're not setting these yet, right?
This meeting schedule typically is amended for different reasons, but it's usually not amended for people's vacation dates. So
no, but I would just tell you if that a particular date was a problem, I would put it out there in case that's a problem for anybody else.
Okay. All right, well, then we can vote on this at the, or finally approve it. Why don't you go through, take a look. Also, did anybody take a look at this vis-à-vis the village?
At the what?
In comparison to the village, because they also meet on Tuesday nights. And I know this year we tried to do it on nights that they weren't.
Yeah, I know tonight there's a meeting about the Purple Heart.
All 4 dates.
That you needed?
Were the 4 that I had to be there.
Oh, well.
Never works, so I'm not, so maybe this year we'll do don't plan it at all. And
then maybe, what you like. So, all right, I'll take a look at that. I'll just see where it is in comparison to their meetings, and we'll just try not to.
So in red are the
overlap too
proposed dates for the
Board
days
meetings.
for our board meetings.
Yep.
But the ones in April and May, I mean, they can't change.
Right.
Because
they're related to the vote.
has its meetings on Tuesday nights at 4.
Okay, so you know what? Take a look at this.
There's the Purple.
Guys, excuse me.
Sorry.
Can you take a look at this and then get back with any problems?
Sure.
And we'll finalize it at the next meeting.
Doug has to go into a right behind his house.
All right, the public is now gone, so we won't have any comments. Any comments from the Board of Ed?
I have 2 quick ones. One, just a reminder for Policy Committee, we're meeting tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in Roy's office. And 2, just in the 2 seconds I looked at this, I'm just seeing that like February and April, there's only 1 meeting each, and I always feel like at the last minute we end up needing to add back another one. So I'm just wondering if, it might not make sense like in April to do the 10th and the 24th instead of the 17th, and to add in, to like just do it a little bit differently so you actually have the 2 meetings, because I feel like, Maureen, you usually need.
Right.
April's probably the one to do both because you got the budget going on.
Right.
Maybe February you probably don't need it, but April you're probably right.
Can I also throw out something that would be for discussion maybe at our organization meeting? I know some other boards of ed that meet twice a month will have one be a business meeting and one be a work session. The work sessions have been, I think they've gone well, and it's more casual discussion with the public, and I think it feels inclusive to the public. So maybe if people are open to it, we could discuss the idea of maybe either adding more work sessions or an on-off kind of thing.
Well, I think probably, we've talked about it in the past. It's usually just a hard thing to define what the work sessions are going to be about. Usually they end up being sort of specific to events as you're going along. And it sort of, like this one came up, and had a couple other ones, but they were related to the superintendent search or whatever. So it's a little hard to plan them out ahead of time. So if you give up all those dates, we can always say these are our meeting dates, and if we want to say, listen, we have a topic we want to just have a work session on, we can just use one of them, and then as long as the business doesn't get doesn't hurt Maureen's ability to do the business of the district.
So hold the date and decide.
You could
at
just
that
say,
time.
this meeting is going to be solely dedicated to a discussion or something like that. So I think it's good to set aside the dates, and then we can sort of flip. One of the things that used to happen also was that there was a schedule of things that we wanted to follow up over the course of the year. So when we get a real handle on what the district's goals are for the year, that will sort of feed into topics of what you would want to be either spending a portion of your board meeting talking about or spending a work session talking about. So once those ideas and topics are more fleshed out, then we might be able to build that kind of a schedule.
The other thing, though, I should just clarify about a work session from the meetings I've been to at the various NYSBA conventions is that even work sessions, they're meetings that are held in public. They're not, like we've been, pretty flexible, and like with this meeting we were letting the public ask questions all the way through, which certainly made sense to do. But the definition of a work session doesn't necessarily mean that it's a conversation with the public, making comments throughout the meeting. It means that the board is having a conversation.
Because they're different. Other districts do it differently. We could take a look at some of the models. Scarsdale has a different model, and they have they'll do a work session prior to their board meetings. So they have a discussion. They'll have, say, somebody come in to talk to them about, a facilities issue, or so that everybody sort of hears. I think they have fewer subcommittees and more, and that's how they handle more of the committee work too. So that's another possibility. So I have to take a look. Okay. Anything else? Feeling good? All right. I remember my first board meeting, like, oh my God, look, and these votes are coming fast and furious, and you're like, okay.
I don't have a public comment to make that.
Fair enough. No problem. All right, so the next meeting then is on June 20th. Okay, and that will be the last one of this school year. Okay. And we will see you then. Okay.
There's a paper going around that all the board members have to sign. It's on the tax.
Sure.
Tax warrant.
All right. I'm sorry, what do we have to sign?
It's going around,
We
you
have
said,
to-
Janine?
This is our tax warrant, so we have to send this to the town of Greenberg so that they will send us our taxes, so.